I pulled into my driveway after a 12-hour overnight shift and found a stack of door hangers zip-tied to my mailbox post. The edges were soaked through from melted snow, ink bleeding into gray mush. Every single one had the Cedar Grove Master Association logo stamped at the top and a paragraph about immediate violation remedies. I live in Westerville, Ohio, a retirement-heavy neighborhood where gossip spreads faster than black ice, and I drive city buses on rotating schedules that put me on call at the worst possible hours. I moved here 6 months ago because the rent was manageable and the commute to the depot was under 20 minutes. The HOA seemed like background noise until that morning. The hangers were dated 3 different days, all delivered while I was working nights. I unlocked my front door and saw another one taped to the glass. That was the moment I knew someone was watching my schedule. I sat down at my kitchen table and peeled the hangers apart carefully so I could read them. The first one claimed I had created a hazardous condition on the common area sidewalk by improper snow removal. The second one said my shoveling technique caused water runoff that froze into black ice and endangered pedestrians. The third one threatened daily fines of $50 starting immediately unless I corrected the violation and submitted photographic proof of compliance. I had shoveled my front walk twice that week, both times using the same method I learned growing up in Cleveland: push the snow to the lawn edge, break up any ice chunks with the blade, scatter some sand on slick spots. Nothing fancy, nothing dangerous. But according to these notices, I was a public menace. The phone rang before I could finish my coffee. I did not recognize the number, but I answered anyway because my dispatcher sometimes calls from random lines when the main system goes down. Instead, I got a woman's voice, sharp and clipped. "This is Dana Reynolds from the Cedar Grove Social Committee. I left multiple notices at your residence regarding the ice hazard you created. I need you to acknowledge receipt and provide a correction timeline immediately." I told her I just got home, and I was reading them now. She did not wait for me to finish. "I am not going to repeat myself. You caused black ice on the sidewalk outside your unit, and a resident slipped yesterday morning. We are holding you financially responsible for any medical costs, and you need to remove the hazard today." I asked her which resident slipped and where exactly the ice was. She went silent for 3 seconds. Then she said, "That information is confidential under association privacy rules, but I can assure you multiple people witnessed the condition and your negligence is documented." I told her I would take a look and get back to her. She cut me off again. "Your neighbors will turn on you, just watch. Everyone here knows everyone, and word travels fast when someone puts the community at risk." She hung up before I could respond. I went outside and walked the entire front sidewalk section that connects my driveway to the main path. The concrete was dry except for 2 small patches near the storm drain where runoff always puddles. Both spots had a thin glaze of refrozen melt, maybe an inch across, nothing that would trip someone unless they were sprinting in dress shoes. I took photos with my phone, time-stamped and geotagged, showing the patches and the surrounding clear concrete. Then I walked the whole block. Every other unit had similar small ice spots near their drains. Some were worse than mine. I took photos of those too. When I got back inside, I called the number Dana had used. It went straight to voicemail. I left a message explaining what I found and offering to put down more sand if she wanted to point out a specific problem area. I also mentioned that I work unpredictable hours, and I need at least 24 hours notice if the HOA is going to lock the gate or restrict access during a storm, because my job requires me to be on call and a gate lockout during a storm is unacceptable. I kept my tone calm and factual. I figured that would be the end of it. 2 days later, I came home to find a second stack of door hangers, this time taped directly to my front door with packing tape that pulled off chunks of paint when I peeled it away. These notices were different. They claimed I had placed unapproved signage in the common area and demanded immediate removal under threat of daily fines starting that morning. I read it 3 times trying to figure out what they were talking about. Then, I looked at my front flower bed. I had put in 4 wooden garden stakes the previous weekend to mark where I planned to plant spring bulbs once the ground thawed. The stakes were 12 inches tall, bare wood, no paint, no text. They were the kind you buy in bulk at any hardware store. According to the new notice, those stakes violated the architectural guidelines because they constituted temporary yard structures without prior approval. I pulled the stakes out and stacked them in my garage. Then I called the Cedar Grove main office and asked to speak to someone about the notices. The woman who answered said the social committee handled enforcement and I should contact Dana Reynolds directly. I said I had tried that and she was not returning my calls. The woman put me on hold for 6 minutes. When she came back, she said Dana would be at the community center that evening for a budget meeting and I could speak to her there if I wanted. I showed up at 7. The meeting room was set up with folding tables arranged in a horseshoe and about 15 residents scattered in the chairs. Dana was standing near the front, talking to an older man in a fleece vest. She was wearing a bright red parka even though the room was warm, and a burgundy knit hat pulled low over dark brown tight curls. She looked up when I walked in and her expression went flat. I crossed the room and introduced myself. She cut me off before I could explain why I was there. This is a closed budget session. Residents may observe, but you cannot interrupt the agenda. I told her I just wanted 2 minutes to clarify the violation notices. She shook her head. You received written documentation. The next step is formal hearing if you dispute the findings. Submit your request in writing within 10 business days. I asked her if she could at least tell me which specific rule the garden stakes violated so I could avoid future issues. She turned away and started talking to the man in the fleece vest again like I was not there. I stood there for another few seconds, then walked out. I did not want to cause a scene in front of a room full of retirees who probably already heard some twisted version of the story. That night I went through the entire Cedar Grove Master Association rulebook. It was a 72-page PDF on the HOA website, last updated in 2019. I searched for every keyword I could think of. Signage, stakes, garden, temporary, structure, decoration. Nothing matched. The closest rule I found said residents must submit architectural change requests for permanent installations like sheds, fences, or retaining walls. Garden stakes did not qualify. I printed the relevant pages and highlighted the sections. Then I drafted a formal dispute letter citing the rules and attaching my photos. I mailed it certified the next morning. 3 days later, I got a phone call from a property management company I had never heard of. The man on the line said his name was Greg, and he was calling on behalf of Cedar Grove to schedule a walkthrough inspection of common property damage allegedly caused by my negligence. I asked him what damage he was talking about. He said the sidewalk near my unit had stress cracks from freeze-thaw cycles caused by improper drainage, and the HOA was holding me responsible for repair costs. He said the estimate was $1,800 and I needed to pay within 15 days or the association would place a lien on my property. I told him I was renting, not owning. He paused. Then he said, "The lien would go against the owner, but the lease terms make you liable for damage caused by your actions. The association can pursue you in small claims if the owner disputes it." I asked him to send me the inspection report and the engineer's findings that connected those cracks to anything I did. He said he would forward the documentation. I never received it. That weekend, I was scheduled for a split shift, 4 hours in the morning and 4 more in the evening with a long break in between. I got home around 2 in the afternoon and found Dana Reynolds standing in my driveway with a man in a reflective safety vest. They were both staring at my front steps. I parked on the street and walked over. Dana did not acknowledge me. The man in the vest had a camera and he was taking photos of my steps from multiple angles. I asked what was going on. Dana finally looked at me. "We are documenting unsafe conditions on association property. You are not required to be present." I asked her what unsafe conditions she meant. She pointed at the steps. "Ice accumulation on the treads. You are required to maintain safe ingress and egress at all times under the community safety standards." I looked at the steps. There was a thin skim of frost on the top tread where the afternoon shadow kept it cold. It was barely enough to see. I told her I had salted the steps that morning before my shift. She ignored me and told the man in the vest to get a close-up. He crouched down and took 3 more shots. I walked past them and went inside. I watched through the window as they spent another 10 minutes out there. Dana was talking on her phone the whole time. The vest guy kept taking pictures. When they finally left, I went back outside and salted every inch of the steps, the walkway, and the driveway apron. Then I took my own photos showing the salt coverage. I was starting to realize this was not about safety. This was about making my life difficult until I gave up and moved. That night, I was halfway through my evening route when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. It was a photo of my car in the driveway with a close-up of the rear bumper sticker that said City Transit Proud. The message underneath said, "Parking commercial vehicle signage in residential zone. Violation logged." I did not respond. My car was a personal sedan. The sticker was 3 inches wide. There was no way that counted as a commercial vehicle. But I knew Dana did not care about facts. She cared about building a paper trail. The next morning, I called my uncle. He is a local attorney, does mostly family law and estate planning, but he knows enough about property disputes to point me in the right direction. I explained the whole situation, the door hangers, the sidewalk claim, the stakes, the inspection, the photos, the texts. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he said, "You need to document everything from this point forward. Dates, times, photos, copies of every notice. If this escalates to a hearing or small claims, you will need proof that you complied and they are acting in bad faith. Also, check your lease. If the owner is not backing you, you might need to loop them in." I pulled my lease that afternoon. There was a clause that said I was responsible for maintaining the exterior of the unit in accordance with HOA rules, but it also said the owner retained the right to contest any fines or liens before they became my responsibility. I called my landlord, a guy named Jim, who lived 2 hours away and owned 3 rental properties in Cedar Grove. I left a voicemail explaining the situation and asking if he had heard anything from the HOA. He called me back 20 minutes later. "Yeah, I got a letter last week saying you were creating liability issues and they were considering a special assessment against my unit for your negligence." I ignored it because it sounded like garbage. "Are they seriously coming after you for ice on a sidewalk?" I told him yes, and about the stakes and the photos and the fake damage claim. He laughed. "Dana Reynolds is on the social committee. She tried to get me fined 2 years ago because I did not show up to some volunteer landscaping day. She is a busybody with too much time. I will send her a letter telling her to back off. If they want to fine me, they can try, but I will tie them up in so much paperwork they will regret it." I thanked him and felt a little bit of the pressure lift. At least I had someone on my side. 2 days later, I came home to find a bright orange sticker on my front door. It was the size of a postcard, and it said "Final Notice" in bold block letters. Underneath, it said I had 72 hours to remove unauthorized modifications to common property, or the HOA would remove them at my expense and charge me a service fee. I had no idea what they were talking about. I walked around the entire outside of the unit. Everything looked normal. Then I saw it. Someone had placed a small plastic reflector stake at the edge of my driveway, the kind used to mark driveways in heavy snow. It was not mine. I had never seen it before. But according to the sticker, I was responsible for it. I pulled out my phone and called my uncle again. I told him about the sticker and the reflector stake. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "That is harassment. They are planting violations to build a case. Do not remove the stake yet. Take photos of it in place, photos of the sticker, and write down the exact time you discovered it. Then check if any neighbors have the same stakes. If they do not, that is more evidence this is targeted." I walked the whole block. No one else had reflector stakes. I took photos of every driveway to prove it. That night, I got a call from Jim, my landlord. He sounded angry. "Dana Reynolds sent me an email threatening to sue me personally for creating a hostile environment and endangering residents. She claims you have been verbally abusive to her and other board members. I know that is lies because you are the most mild-mannered tenant I have ever had. But she is copying the whole board and the management company. This is getting out of hand." I told him I had never yelled at anyone or been rude. The only time I even spoke to Dana was at the budget meeting, and I walked away when she would not talk to me. Jim said he believed me, but we needed to shut this down fast before it turned into a legal nightmare for both of us. The next day, I was at the depot fueling my bus when my phone rang. It was my uncle. I did some digging. Dana Reynolds was involved in a similar dispute 3 years ago with a previous tenant in your neighborhood. That tenant ended up moving out after the HOA placed a lien on the owner's property. The owner sued the HOA and lost because the tenant did not document anything, and the board had a stack of violation notices that looked legitimate on paper. The case file is public record. I pulled it. The pattern is identical to what is happening to you. I asked him what I should do. He said, you need to go to the next board meeting and request a formal hearing. Force them to present their evidence in front of witnesses. Bring your documentation and your photos. If they are acting in bad faith, they will either back down or they will double down and give you grounds for a counterclaim. Either way, you need to get this on the record. I told him I would do it. He said he would come with me as an observer. That made me feel a little less alone. The board meeting was scheduled for the following Thursday at 6:30. I finished my shift early and drove straight to the community center. My uncle met me in the parking lot. We walked in together. The meeting room was more crowded this time, maybe 25 people spread across the folding chairs. Dana was sitting at the head table with 3 other board members. She saw me come in, and her jaw tightened. I signed the speaker request sheet and sat down in the back row. The meeting dragged through 40 minutes of budget line items and landscaping contract renewals. Finally, the board president, a man in his 70s with a cardigan and wire-rimmed glasses, called for public comments. I stood up and walked to the front. I introduced myself and said I was there to formally dispute the violations and request a hearing. Dana cut me off before I could continue. You were provided written notice and a dispute process. You cannot ambush the board during a public meeting. I pulled out the certified mail receipt showing I had sent my dispute letter 2 weeks earlier. I said I never received a response. The board president looked at Dana. She shrugged. We are reviewing the matter internally. You will be notified when a decision is made. I asked when that would be. She did not answer. The president cleared his throat. We will provide a timeline within 10 business days. Please submit any additional documentation to the management company. I thanked him and sat down. My uncle leaned over and whispered,
That was good. You got it on the record. Now we wait.
3 days later, I got an email from the property management company with a hearing date scheduled for 2 weeks out. The email included a list of allegations: improper snow removal, unauthorized signage, common property damage, creation of hazardous conditions, and failure to comply with remediation orders. Each allegation had a proposed fine attached. The total was $4,200. I forwarded the email to my uncle and my landlord. Jim called me within an hour. This is insane. I am not paying a dime of this. I already told them in writing that I dispute all of it. If they want to fight, I will fight. My uncle was calmer. This is exactly what I expected. They are throwing everything at you hoping something sticks. The good news is most of this is clearly retaliatory, and you have documentation proving it. The bad news is they are going to make you spend time and energy defending yourself. At the hearing, stay factual, stay calm, and let them talk first. They will overreach. When they do, that is when you present your evidence. The week before the hearing, I got a voicemail from a tow company saying they had been contracted by Cedar Grove Master Association to remove an abandoned vehicle from common property, and they needed to confirm my contact information. I called them back immediately. The dispatcher said, "We have an order to tow a sedan matching your plate number from the guest parking area. The association claims it has been parked there for over 72 hours in violation of community rules." I told her my car was in my assigned driveway and had been there every night. She sounded confused. "Let me pull up the work order." "Hold on." She came back a minute later. The order says the vehicle is in guest parking spot 7, and the association contact is Dana Reynolds. She submitted the request yesterday. I told her my car was not in guest parking, and I had never parked there. I offered to send her a photo with a timestamp. She said, "That would be helpful. I will put a hold on the order until we verify the vehicle location. We do not tow without confirming, but I appreciate you calling." I sent her the photo and thanked her. Then I called my uncle and told him what happened. He said, "Save that call log. That is evidence of coordinated harassment. If Dana is filing false tow orders, that is a legal problem for her, not you." I walked out to the guest parking area that evening just to check. Spot 7 was empty. There was no car matching my description anywhere in the lot. I took photos of the empty spot and the surrounding area. Then I took a photo of my car in my driveway with the house number visible in the frame. I saved everything in a dedicated folder on my phone labeled HOA Evidence. The night before the hearing, I could not sleep. I kept running through the whole timeline in my head, trying to anticipate what Dana would say and how the board would react. I got up at 4 in the morning and made coffee. I reviewed all my documentation one more time: the door hangers, the photos, the certified mail receipts, the lease clause, the tow company call log, the emails, the text messages. I had everything organized in a binder with tabs and highlights. My uncle had coached me on how to present it: start with the timeline, show the pattern, let the evidence speak for itself. The hearing was scheduled for 7 in the evening. I took a half day off work and spent the afternoon going over my notes. My uncle picked me up at 6:15 and we drove to the community center together. The parking lot was nearly full. When we walked into the meeting room, I saw at least 30 residents in the chairs, way more than usual. Dana was already at the front table with the other board members. She was wearing the same bright red parka and burgundy hat. She looked up when I walked in, and her expression did not change. The board president called the meeting to order and read the allegations out loud. Then he asked me if I wanted to make a statement. I stood up and walked to the front. I kept my voice steady and factual. I said I had complied with every HOA rule to the best of my ability, and I had documentation proving it. I said the violations were either fabricated or based on conditions that existed throughout the neighborhood and were not unique to my unit. I said I believed the enforcement was targeted and retaliatory. Then I opened my binder and started walking through the evidence. I showed the photos of the small ice patches on my sidewalk compared to identical patches on other sidewalks. I showed the printed HOA rules with highlighted sections proving the garden stakes did not violate any architectural guidelines. I showed the certified mail receipt proving I had submitted a timely dispute. I showed the photos of the reflector stake that appeared overnight and the evidence that no other unit had similar stakes. I showed the tow company call log with the timestamp and the dispatcher's notes. The room was silent. Dana's face was red. When I finished, the board president asked Dana if she wanted to respond. She stood up and said, "Everything we have done is within our authority as outlined in the CC&Rs. This resident has repeatedly failed to maintain his property to community standards, and we have a responsibility to protect the safety and property values of all homeowners. I am not going to repeat myself. The violations are documented, and the fines are justified." My uncle stood up. He introduced himself as legal counsel and said he had a question for the board. He asked if the association had any photographic or engineering evidence that the sidewalk cracks were caused by my actions rather than normal freeze-thaw cycles. The board president looked at Dana. She said, "We have the inspection report from our contractor." My uncle asked to see it. She said it was in the file. My uncle asked her to produce it now. She shuffled through a folder on the table and pulled out a single sheet of paper. She handed it to the president. He read it and frowned. "This is an estimate for sidewalk repair. It does not identify a cause or assign responsibility." My uncle thanked him and sat down. Then he said, "For the record, I would like to note that the association has provided no evidence linking any alleged damage to my client's actions. I would also like to note that the tow order submitted by Ms. Reynolds was based on false information, as the vehicle in question was never in the location claimed. That constitutes filing a false report with a commercial service provider, which may have legal consequences beyond this hearing." The room erupted. 3 people started talking at once. The board president banged his gavel and called for order. Dana stood up again and said, "This is a witch hunt. I have served this community for 6 years, and I will not be accused of misconduct by some outsider who does not even own property here." My uncle did not respond. He just looked at her. The silence stretched. Then the board president said, "We will take a 15-minute recess to review the materials." During the recess, 2 residents came up to me and said they had similar problems with Dana in the past. One of them said she had been fined for leaving a trash can out overnight even though the pickup schedule required it. The other said Dana had reported her for having a wreath on her door in July because it was not a holiday-approved decoration. Neither of them had fought it because they did not want the hassle. I thanked them for telling me. My uncle said, "This is good. If other people are willing to testify about a pattern, That strengthens your case. When the board reconvened, the president said they needed more time to review the evidence and they would issue a written decision within 10 business days. I asked if the fines were suspended pending the decision. He said yes. Dana did not look at me. The meeting adjourned and everyone filed out. My uncle and I walked to the parking lot. He said, "You did great. They know they do not have a case. Now we wait and see if they try to save face, or if they fold." 5 days later, I got a letter from the board. It said that after further review, the association was withdrawing the fines related to the garden stakes, the reflector stake, and the sidewalk damage. However, they were upholding the violation for improper snow removal and assessing a reduced fine of $200. The letter said I could appeal to the full membership at the annual meeting or pay the fine within 30 days. I called my uncle. He said they are trying to save face by keeping one minor violation on the books. $200 is not worth fighting in court, but it is also not nothing. You have two options: pay it and move on, or appeal and drag this out for another few months. What do you want to do? I thought about it. I was tired. I was sick of this. But I also did not want to give Dana the satisfaction of a win, even a small one. I told him I wanted to appeal. The annual meeting was 6 weeks away. In the meantime, Dana left me alone. No more door hangers. No more texts. No more surprise inspections. I started to think maybe she had finally backed off. But then, 2 weeks before the annual meeting, I got a call from Jim, my landlord. The board just sent me a special assessment notice. They are charging my unit $1,000 for legal fees related to your dispute. They are saying I should have controlled my tenant and prevented the situation from escalating. I am not paying it. I am going to fight this, but I wanted you to know. I felt my stomach drop. This was not over. Dana was going after Jim because she could not get to me. I told him I was sorry and I would do whatever I could to help. He said, "It is not your fault. This is on them. But I am going to need you to testify at the annual meeting about what really happened. Are you willing to do that?" I said yes. The week before the annual meeting, something strange happened. I got a call from a woman I did not know. She said her name was Linda and she was on the HOA board, the treasurer. She said she needed to talk to me privately about Dana Reynolds. We agreed to meet at a coffee shop near the depot. I brought my uncle. Linda showed up alone. She was in her 60s, soft-spoken, with reading glasses on a chain around her neck. She ordered tea and sat down across from us. She said, "I do not know how to say this, so I am just going to say it. I have been reviewing the financial records for the social committee and I found irregularities. Dana has been submitting reimbursement requests for expenses that do not match the committee's approved budget. I started digging and I found emails where she was coordinating with other board members to target specific residents for enforcement actions. Your name came up multiple times. So did 3 other people who either moved out or paid fines in the last 2 years. My uncle leaned forward. "Are you saying she was falsifying records?" Linda nodded. "Not just falsifying. She was forging signatures on approval forms. I compared the signatures on file to the ones on the original email threads. They do not match. I think she has been running her own agenda and covering it up by manipulating the records." I asked her why she was telling us this. She said, "Because it is wrong. I joined this board to help the community, not to be part of some personal vendetta. I already told the president what I found. He is bringing it to the full board this week. But I wanted you to know so you are not blindsided at the annual meeting." My uncle asked her if she would be willing to testify if this went to court. She said yes. The annual meeting was held in the clubhouse on a Saturday morning. The room was packed, every chair was full, and people were standing along the walls. The board sat at the front table. Dana was not there. The president opened the meeting and said there was an urgent matter that needed to be addressed before the regular agenda. He said the board had discovered evidence of financial misconduct and procedural violations by a committee chair, and the matter was being referred to legal counsel for further investigation. He did not name Dana, but everyone in the room knew who he meant. Then he said the board had reviewed my appeal, and they were reversing the snow removal fine and issuing a formal apology for the mishandling of the case. He said the special assessment against Jim's unit was also being withdrawn. He said the board was implementing new oversight procedures to prevent similar issues in the future. The room was silent. Then someone in the back started clapping. A few others joined in. My uncle put his hand on my shoulder. After the meeting, Linda found me in the parking lot. She said, "Dana resigned yesterday." She sent an email to the board saying she was stepping down for personal reasons. I do not think we will see her at another meeting. I thanked her for her courage. She smiled. "You did the hard part. You stood up when most people would have just paid the fine and moved on." 2 weeks later, I got a letter from a law firm representing Cedar Grove Master Association. It was a settlement offer. The HOA was offering to reimburse me for any out-of-pocket costs related to the dispute, including my uncle's consulting fees, in exchange for a mutual release of claims. My uncle reviewed it and said it was fair. I signed it. The HOA cut me a check for $1,200. A month after that, Jim called me with news. The board voted to hire a new management company. The old one was too cozy with Dana, and they did not do any oversight. The new company is doing a full audit of the last 3 years. Sounds like there might be more problems than just your case. I told him I was glad things were changing. He said, "Me too. And by the way, your lease is up for renewal in 4 months. I am dropping your rent by $50 a month as a thank you for putting up with all this." I stayed in Cedar Grove. The new management company was competent and professional. The board elected Linda as the new president. She ran on a platform of transparency and accountability. Dana never came back. I heard from a neighbor that she moved to a condo across town. I did not follow up. I did not need to. The whole experience taught me something important. Documentation beats intimidation every time. When someone tries to use rules as a weapon, the best defense is to know the rules better than they do and to build a paper trail that cannot be argued away. Winter came around again the following year. I shoveled my sidewalk the same way I always did. I put down salt. I took photos. But this time no one left door hangers on my mailbox. No one called me about black ice. No one tried to tow my car. The neighborhood felt different. Quieter. Less tense. People started saying hello when I walked to my car in the morning. A few of them thanked me for standing up to Dana. One older man said I had done the whole community a favor by forcing the board to clean house. I kept my evidence folder on my phone just in case. I kept my uncle's number on speed dial. I kept my lease terms memorized. But I did not need any of it. The new board ran things by the book. Violations were rare and always handled with a warning first. Fines were reserved for actual safety hazards, not made-up technicalities. The social committee started hosting events that people actually wanted to attend instead of mandatory volunteer days. Looking back, the whole thing felt surreal. It started with a stack of soggy door hangers and escalated into forged signatures and false tow orders. But it ended with accountability. That is the part that mattered. A lot of people told me I should have just paid the fines and avoided the hassle. Maybe they were right. Maybe it would have been easier. But I do not think it would have been better. Because if I had paid, Dana would have kept targeting people. She would have kept forging documents. She would have kept using the HOA as a personal weapon. Someone had to push back. It happened to be me. I still drive buses on rotating shifts. I still keep odd hours. I still come home at strange times and find my driveway covered in snow. But now when I shovel, I do it without looking over my shoulder. I do it without worrying that someone is taking photos to use against me. I do it because it needs to be done, not because I am afraid of a $50 fine. That is what winning feels like. Not dramatic, not loud, just normal. One more thing worth mentioning. About 6 months after the settlement, I was fueling my bus at the depot and I saw Dana at a gas station across the street. She was pumping gas into a silver SUV. She looked up and saw me. For a second, we made eye contact. Then she looked away and got back in her car. She drove off without a word. I did not feel anger. I did not feel satisfaction. I just felt tired. The whole conflict had taken so much energy, so much time, so much focus. And in the end, it came down to one simple truth. Some people will always try to control others, and the only way to stop them is to refuse to be controlled. I got back in my bus and finished my shift. When I got home that night, there was a package on my doorstep. It was from Linda, the HOA president. Inside was a thank you card and a Cedar Grove coffee mug. The card said, "Thank you for holding us accountable. This community is better because you did not back down." I put the mug on my kitchen shelf. Every time I see it, I remember that standing up for yourself is not about being confrontational. It is about being thorough, being patient, and being willing to see things through even when it is uncomfortable. The community center started hosting new events under Linda's leadership. One of them was a winter safety workshop where residents could learn proper snow removal techniques and get free salt from the HOA's bulk order. I showed up out of curiosity. The presenter was a retired city worker who had spent 30 years managing snow operations. He walked everyone through the basics: shovel early and often, push snow to the edges, break up ice before it sets, use salt sparingly, and never block storm drains. It was everything I had been doing all along. After the presentation, a few people came up to me and apologized for believing Dana's version of events. I told them it was fine. No hard feelings. That spring, I renewed my lease. Jim offered me a 2-year term instead of 1. He said he appreciated having a tenant who did not cause drama and who actually cared about keeping the place in good shape. I signed without hesitation. Cedar Grove was not perfect, but it was stable. The new management company responded to maintenance requests within 48 hours. The board published meeting minutes online. The budget was transparent. It felt like a real community instead of a battlefield. One afternoon in late April, I was mowing the small patch of lawn in front of my unit when Linda walked by with her dog. She stopped and said hello. We chatted for a few minutes about the weather and the new landscaping plans. Then she said, "I never told you this, but after Dana resigned, we found more emails." She had been coordinating with 2 other board members to target residents who she thought were not contributing enough to community events. Your name was on a list, along with 4 other people. They were planning to escalate enforcement until you either got more involved or moved out. I asked her what happened to the other board members. She said, "They resigned quietly. We did not make it public because we did not want to create more division. But they are gone. The new board is clean." I thanked her for telling me. She said, "You deserve to know." What Dana did was not just unethical, it was illegal. If you had wanted to press charges, you would have had a strong case. But I understand why you did not. Sometimes the best outcome is just getting people out of power so they cannot hurt anyone else. She was right. I did not want to spend years in court fighting Dana. I just wanted her to stop. And she did. That was enough. Summer came and went. Fall rolled around. I settled into a rhythm. Work, home, occasional HOA meetings to stay informed, weekend errands, visits with my uncle and his family. Life was normal, boring even, and I was grateful for it. The chaos of that first winter felt like a distant memory, something that happened to someone else. But I did not forget the lessons. I kept my documentation habits. I still took photos of my sidewalk after every snowstorm. I still saved every email and text from the HOA. I still kept my lease terms fresh in my mind. Not because I expected another fight, but because I knew that vigilance is the price of stability. The moment you stop paying attention is the moment someone tries to take advantage. One evening in November, I was sitting in my living room when I heard a knock on the door. It was a younger couple I had seen around the neighborhood but never spoken to. They introduced themselves as new renters in the unit 2 buildings over. The woman said, "We heard you had some trouble with the old HOA board, and we wanted to ask your advice. We just got a violation notice for having a political sign in our window, and we do not know if we should fight it or just take it down." I invited them in and made coffee. We sat at my kitchen table and I walked them through the basics, read the CC&Rs, document everything, know your rights, do not let anyone bully you into paying a fine without evidence. I showed them my evidence folder as an example. They took notes. The man said, "This is really helpful. We were about to just pay the fine because we did not want trouble. But now I think we should at least ask questions." I told them that was exactly the right approach. I said the new board was fair and reasonable, but it was always smart to protect yourself. They thanked me and left. A week later, they texted me to say the board had reversed the violation after they pointed out that political signs were protected by state law. I was glad I could help. It felt like closing the loop. Winter came around again, the second winter in Cedar Grove. This time I was ready. I had spare salt in the garage. I had a backup shovel. I had my documentation system locked in. But I did not need any of it. The storms were mild. The HOA sent out reminders about snow removal. But they were polite and informational, not threatening. Nobody left door hangers on my mailbox, nobody took photos of my steps, nobody tried to tow my car. It was exactly what I had hoped for, completely uneventful. I ran into Linda at the grocery store in early December. She was buying supplies for a holiday party the HOA was hosting at the clubhouse. She said attendance was up compared to previous years. She said people felt more comfortable participating now that the culture had shifted. I told her I was glad to hear it. She said, "You played a big part in that. You set a precedent. Now people know they can push back if something is not right." I did not see it that way at first. I thought I was just defending myself. But maybe she was right. Maybe by refusing to fold, I changed the dynamic for everyone. That was a strange feeling. Not pride exactly, more like responsibility. Like now, I had to keep setting a good example because people were watching. The holiday party was nice. Low-key. Cookies and hot chocolate. A raffle for a gift basket. Conversations with neighbors I barely knew. One of them, an older woman who had lived in Cedar Grove for 15 years, came up to me and said, "I want to thank you for what you did last year. Dana made this place feel hostile. I stopped going to meetings because I did not want to deal with her. But now I feel like I can be involved again." I told her I was just trying to protect myself. She said, "That is how it starts." One person stands up, and then others realize they can too. I thought about that a lot in the weeks that followed. I thought about all the people who had paid fines they did not owe because they did not want the hassle. I thought about all the people who moved out because they could not take the pressure. I thought about how easy it would have been for me to do the same. And I thought about how close I came to giving up. Especially during that first hearing when Dana was throwing allegations at me and the board was stone-faced and silent. But I did not give up. I kept my receipts. I kept my photos. I kept my calm. And it worked. Not because I was smarter or braver than anyone else, but because I was stubborn and I had help. My uncle gave me legal guidance. Jim backed me up. Linda blew the whistle. It took a team. That is another lesson. You cannot fight these battles alone. You need allies. You need people who will stand with you when the pressure gets intense. By the time January rolled around, I felt fully settled. Cedar Grove was home. Not in a sentimental way, but in a practical one. I knew the streets, I knew the rules, I knew the people, I knew where I stood. That is all I ever wanted. Stability, predictability, and fairness. For a while, Dana tried to take that away. But she failed. And now I had something even better. Confidence. Confidence that I could handle whatever came next. Confidence that I knew how to protect myself. Confidence that the system, when forced to work correctly, could actually deliver justice. I kept driving my bus routes. I kept coming home at odd hours. I kept shoveling my sidewalk and salting my steps. And every time I did, I thought about those soggy door hangers zip-tied to my mailbox. I thought about Dana's voice on the phone. "I am not going to repeat myself. Your neighbors will turn on you. Just watch." She was wrong. My neighbors did not turn on me. They turned on her. Because when you weaponize the rules, eventually people notice. Eventually, someone pushes back. And eventually, the truth comes out. That is the real story. Not the confrontation in the clubhouse parking lot. Not the forged signatures or the tow company call log. Those were just details. The real story is about what happens when ordinary people refuse to be bullied. It is about the power of documentation. It is about the importance of allies. It is about the slow, grinding process of holding people accountable. It is not dramatic. It is not cinematic. But it is real. And it works. I still have the Cedar Grove coffee mug on my shelf. I still have the evidence folder on my phone. I still have my uncle's number on speed dial. But I have not needed any of it. The new board runs things clean. The management company does its job. The community feels like a community again. And I get to live my life without looking over my shoulder. That is what victory looks like. Quiet. Normal. Boring. And absolutely worth fighting for. One last thing. A few months ago, I was filling up my bus at the depot, and I saw a notice on the bulletin board. It was a job posting for a part-time community liaison position with the city's transit department. The role involved attending neighborhood meetings and addressing resident concerns about bus routes, schedules, and stops. I applied on a whim. I figured my experience with Cedar Grove had given me some useful skills: patience, documentation, conflict resolution. I got the job. Now I spend a few hours a week going to HOA meetings across the city, not as a resident, but as a city representative. And you know what? Almost every neighborhood has a Dana. Someone who uses their position to push people around. Someone who hides behind rules and procedures to settle personal scores. Someone who thinks they are untouchable because no one wants the hassle of fighting back. But every time I walk into one of those meetings, I see people who are tired of it. People who are looking for someone to tell them it is okay to push back. People who just need a little bit of guidance and a little bit of courage. So I share my story. Not in detail, but in outline. I tell them about the door hangers and the tow order and the forged signatures. I tell them about the importance of documentation. I tell them about the power of refusing to fold. And I watch their faces change. I watch them sit up a little straighter. I watch them start taking notes. And I know that some of them are going to fight, some of them are going to win, and some of them are going to make their communities better because they did not give up. That is the legacy of my fight with Dana Reynolds. Not a court victory, not a financial settlement, but a ripple effect. A reminder that ordinary people have power if they are willing to use it. A reminder that bullies only win when no one stands up. A reminder that the rules, when used correctly, can protect you instead of punish you. And a reminder that sometimes the hardest thing to do is also the most important thing to do. I still live in Cedar Grove. I still drive buses. I still shovel my sidewalk. But now I also help other people fight their own battles. And that feels right. It feels like the whole terrible experience with Dana was not for nothing. It was preparation. It was training. It was a lesson I did not know I needed to learn. And now I get to pass that lesson on. So if you are reading this, and you are dealing with an HOA that is out of control, or a neighbor who is using the rules as a weapon, or a board member who thinks they are above accountability, here is my advice. Document everything. Know the rules better than they do. Find your allies. Stay calm, and do not give up. It will be exhausting. It will be frustrating. It will feel like it is not worth it. But it is. Because the alternative is letting them win. And that is not an option. I learned that the hard way. But I learned it. And now I am sharing it. That is the end of my story. Not a Hollywood ending. Not a courtroom speech. Just a quiet reminder that justice is possible if you are willing to work for it. And sometimes, that is enough.